This is me when I was 3 years old. I have always loved making and building things. Although I didn't realize it until much later, the most important educational experiences for me and my twin brother Mac were happening during this time. We are new to the world, and just by existing and being curious, we learn so much.
You did it! Ta-da! Okay, no, not the one that's
This
the
is
one
me
that's
when I was
facing.
4 years old. This is the first preschool that I attended, and we played games and sang songs. I was a shy kid, but had lots of energy. When I was 5 years old, I went to pre-K in PS 234, and I would be there until I graduated elementary school in the 5th grade. The public school system in the United States was undergoing changes due to policies like No Child Left Behind, but this did not affect me initially. This was in part due to the school being in one of the wealthier neighborhoods in New York City, and the Parent-Teacher Association raising an incredibly large sum of money.
As of this hour, America's schools will be on a new path of reform and a new path of results. Our schools will have higher expectations. We believe every child can learn.
The teachers cared about what was happening in our personal lives. Every Monday, we would share what we did over the
Parents will have more
weekend.
information about the schools and more say in how their children are educated.
When my parents wanted to take me and my brother to Japan to see our family, our teachers encouraged it as they thought it would be a great learning experience. We missed 2 weeks of classes, and in return, we wrote and drew about our time there. Around the same time, I attended a Japanese weekend school. I had a good time, but I was also quite aware of how me and my brother stood out compared to the full Japanese kids that spoke the language fluently. One of my clear memories from the school was when we were playing tug of war once. I was on one team, and my brother was on the other team. His team won, but he fell backwards and hit his head on a coat hook. He was rushed to the doctor and had to get his head stapled. I was in the 3rd grade when I had to take my first standardized test. The test was called the English Language Arts Test, or ELA for short. This was the start of many tests that would dominate my educational experience for the next 10 years. We had to apply and take tests to get into certain middle schools, and my brother and I got into a school called Lab Middle School for collaborative studies. I remember a strangely small amount from middle school. Unlike elementary school, we sat in rows of desks and were graded on a numerical scale. I would take the train to school and back every day with my brother, and looking back, that is the part of the day that I remember the clearest. I remember once, when we were discussing World War II, our class had a debate about whether it was right for the United States to drop the atomic bombs on Japan. I was shocked about the number of students that thought it was the right decision, especially as me and my family had recently visited the Peace Memorial Museum in Hiroshima. I was in the 8th grade when the Sandy Hook shooting occurred. Although school shootings were not a new thing, this was the deadliest mass shooting at an elementary school in U.S. history, and it was the first one that I remember hearing about. Throughout my time in high school, school shootings began occurring more frequently throughout the country, and we had school shooter drills to prepare for such an instance.
This evening, Michelle and I will do what I know every parent in America will do, which is hug our children a little tighter, and we'll tell them that we love them, and we'll remind each other how deeply we love one another. But there are families in Connecticut who cannot do that tonight, and they need all of us right now. In the hard days to come, that community needs us to be at our best as Americans, and I will do everything in my power as president to help.
I realized much later that schools have never been the safe spaces that they have always been made out to be, and that schools could be a dangerous place. Police officers roamed the hallways in middle school and high school, and they always made everyone uneasy. When I was in college, many stories emerged about sexual assaults and abuses that occurred at my high school. I had no idea in high school and didn't realize how unsafe the space was for some people that I knew. To get into high school, I had to go through another admissions process. There are 8 public high schools in New York City called specialized schools, and I took an admission test to get into them. Based on that single test score, me and my brother got into a school called Stuyvesant High School. There was great controversy around this test, as people argued that this test further segregated what was already the most segregated school system in the country.
Out of 895 students admitted to Stuyvesant for next fall, just 33 kids are Latino. Only 7 students are African American.
No other city in the country uses a single test for admissions. Let me repeat that. No other city or system in the country uses a single test for admissions to their specialized school.
We're going to take a test.
Going to this school sucked any of the joy of learning that I still had after my middle school experience. Every class was hyper-focused on grades and test results, and I dreaded going to classes every day. When I was in school, I was eager for the school day to end so I could go to soccer or track practice. All of my close high school friends were on the track team, and I feel like in many ways they saved my life.
At this point, you have to ask yourself, if standardized tests are bad for teachers and bad for kids, who exactly are they good for? Well, it turns out they're operated by companies like all these.
We had to take a foreign language class, and I chose Japanese, hoping to become fluent enough to speak to my relatives with ease. However, there was so much pressure to get good grades that I didn't feel like I learned much. To this day, not knowing how to speak Japanese fluently is one of my biggest regrets. When applying for colleges, I didn't know what I wanted to study, as I didn't really enjoy any subject in high school. My mom suggested architecture, as she remembered all of the drawings I used to make when I was little. After another grueling admissions process, I got into Carnegie Mellon University. Coming to college was the first time I didn't live with my parents in New York City for an extended period of time, and it was also exciting in the beginning. I made new friends, and I was roommates with one of my best friends from elementary and middle school, who also happened to end up at Carnegie Mellon. We did crazy things and explored new possibilities. It was also the first time that I attended a different school than my brother, and I feel like it allowed both of us to grow without constant comparisons. During my first few years at college, I continued to work hard. Although I enjoyed the work, I wasn't exactly sure why I was doing it beyond the fact that I was told to. I had to pull many all-nighters and I felt depressed and homesick. I remember a strangely small amount from this period of time, despite the fact that it was so recent. During my 3rd year, I had a few professors that really opened my eyes to new perspectives, and I finally started questioning the way that we were taught. Then the COVID-19 pandemic hit. I realized that even though I've been in school for so many years, we never questioned or learned about education itself. I started reading and watching works by Bell Hooks, Paulo Freire, Ivan Illich, Sugata Mitra, and others, and began to understand that education can be an emancipatory act that extends far beyond the walls of a classroom.
I think what's really tragic about education, particularly at a higher level in our nation right now, is that it has become to be something that is about the marketplace, so that there's a lot of repression that students begin to do because they want to prepare themselves for the marketplace, for getting the money and getting the power and getting the status and getting the fame. And that means that you can't always say what you want to say.
This is the first experiment that we did. 8-year-old boy on your right, teaching his student, a 6-year-old girl, and he was teaching her how to browse. This boy here in the middle of central India, this is in a Rajasthan village where the children recorded their own music, and then played it back to each other. And in the process, they enjoyed themselves thoroughly. They did all of this in 4 hours after seeing the computer for the first time.
Is it possible to have anti-racist education in a racist place that is literally pushing out, has benefited, historically speaking, from slavery, slave labor, black labor, indigenous labor, indigenous oppression, black oppression, Latino oppression, and still today it still does it, right, through gentrification, right?
A inteligência se cria, se constrói, não se recebe, quer dizer, a gente vai construindo a inteligência na luta para compreender e mudar o mundo. É aí que a inteligência se faz, se constrói, se dá.
I decided to continue exploring the topic of education for my thesis project, and I have started imagining a new world with different forms of educational systems. I also ran several workshops at Carnegie Mellon and at Assemble, an educational nonprofit organization in Pittsburgh. Each of these workshops were with different age groups, and the workshops were focused on reflecting on current forms of education and imagining new types of education. Going through this process made me realize that I would love to be a teacher and mentor of some form in the future.
And over here is a cat made and here's a whiteboard. So yeah, the whiteboard actually works. Like you can write whatever your zone is.
Alright, Aiden. What do we have?
My favorite things like walls,
Yeah, can we see?
space, and the ocean, and ice blocks. I like to swallow ice blocks.
Would this be a place you would want to come and learn?
Yeah. And there's a deep stairs to the waterfall. Do you want to see it?
An ice waterfall? Yes, please.
This is the ice.
Oh my goodness!
The waterfall.
Wow, an ice waterfall.
I needed to.
We found where they went.
But there was still one missing piece of this project, my story, so I decided to go all the way back to the beginning.
Yep. You did it. Ta-da!